what has happened so far, we've learned today, after this sort of some sort of chaos with the fighter jets, then the rescue operation, then what has happened so far. But I want to talk about the rescue operation, in which it was costly for the United States after all.
Oh yeah.
But in your opinion, when it comes, because we were talking about the ground invasion of Iran, for a single pilot, they sacrificed a lot of weapons, a lot of, machinery, together with, I would say, many people were wounded in this operation. And
Yeah.
what do you make of what has happened in terms of the rescue operation?
Um. Well, I haven't seen a clear picture of anybody saying exactly what happened. I mean, first of all, let's begin with um, two things we know. Obviously, the planes were operating on the edges of Iran. Um, because no matter what Donald Trump says about the anti-aircraft systems being destroyed, they obviously aren't, and you don't see American or Israeli planes going down. Probably you just see American planes. I don't think there's that many even Israeli planes anywhere near. You don't see them going down the middle of Iran. You see everything gets being hit that's piloted is toward the edges of Iran or over Iraq or over Kuwait. You see unmanned systems getting taken down in the middle of Iran, but those are unmanned systems. So that tells you one, these Zionist alliance understands that Iran's anti-aircraft systems are not down. They're being husbanded. They get selectively used. They just don't go all out and we'll just start shooting everything we have so we can get all blown up. They keep husbanded. The S-400 systems are somewhere out there waiting, more than likely waiting for the B-52s to show up. And this just goes further to prove it. And they got taken out on the edge of Iran. So yeah, you could do a rescue operation or attempt to do a rescue operation inside Iran without going very deep into Iran. But even with that, we saw what happens when they start doing it. They got the first guy out pretty quickly. Second guy, he was somewhere out there on survival mode. Um, and it's very lucky that the Iranian government said they offered money for his capture. Because what normally happens is uh, down pilots, particularly when the enemy is just indiscriminately bombing everything in sight, they don't tend to live long enough to get into the hands of the actual military. Because if the locals find them, they usually kill them. And that's the biggest threat to the pilots is the locals finding them. They're pissed off, and they'll usually do them in, or torture them and do them in. Whereas the military will just usually take them prisoner. So by giving a bounty on his head alive, obviously the Iranian government set up so that he wouldn't be killed by very angry locals. Then yes, so then they brought in a C-130 with two helicopters, two uh, uh, Black Hawk helicopters to look for him. They got one guy out. One of the helicopters was smoking, and there was lots of videos that came out with all the locals just shooting whatever they had at the helicopter. That helicopter was obviously the okay. Am I reloading? Okay, the helicopter obviously wasn't hit by anti-aircraft systems because otherwise it would have just come down. It wouldn't have been flying and smoking. It would have just crashed. Helicopters don't glide; they just fall out of the sky really, really badly when the blades stop spinning. Um, since it was flying and smoking, it was obviously had been hit probably by small arms fire. The locals with hunting rifles, shotguns, assault rifles are shooting at it. And there were videos of that happening.
There
So
were Bakhtiari nomads in
yeah,
that region. Yeah, they know how to shoot. They know how to work with the rifle. I think that would be the case. Yeah.
and the helicopters are flying relatively low. You could tell they're flying relatively low because they're looking for the guy. And yes, the locals were taking very many pot shots at it. No, obviously they hit. So that was the first guy, and then with the second guy, yeah, they apparently. And while all this was happening, there were two A-10s in Kuwait that were hit. One was destroyed, and another one was damaged. Um, So they were hit by. I don't know if they were hit by Iranians or they were hit by Iraqis at this point, because the U.S. is actually not only as was the U.S. fighting Iraqi militias, U.S. has delivered missile blows to Iraqi military bases. So the Iraqi military is involved in this too. So it might have been Iraq that was shooting at those two A-10s that flown in. Remember, there's only 10 A-10s that were brought in. So that's 20% either destroyed or damaged already. And no ground operations have started yet. So that's not looking good. And then getting this other guy out, right? So they had two damaged C-130s. So that's as far as the story goes, they landed them, and then they set them on fire to deny them to Iraqi forces. And they also apparently lost a Little Bird. Little Birds are these little helicopters used by special forces to insert special forces.
They lost 4 of them. These Little Birds.
It's
The
4 now.
updates from ABC, NBC, and New York Times so far, it shows 4 of them were hit by Iranians.
Were they lost?
Yeah,
or were they just damaged?
They were destroyed. 4 of them.
Wow.
4 Little Birds, MH6 Little Birds were destroyed.
Wow, that makes that even that much worse if they lost 4 Little Birds. I mean, obviously they're not saying much on casualties. At least the last time I was looking at the report, they weren't saying much on casualties. But even if nobody was killed, there were people wounded, and equipment loss is pretty big. This is to get one guy out. Now, if this was a one-off mission, that's expensive. But okay, we're only one time. But as this conflict rolls on, you can expect more American planes to go down, more pilots, and if the U.S. is taking that kind of casualty rates to get a guy out, they can't keep that up for too long. That's that mission accomplished, but man, at what cost? I mean, it has a huge cost in not just material but people too.
Yeah. And then we had the new reports on Fox News. Literally, Donald Trump is talking about in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, we're going to have some sort of agreement with Iran. Here is what Fox News reported.
President Trump for 15 minutes. He gave me some new details on the negotiations behind the scenes with the Iranians and what's going to happen if Iran does not make a good faith deal. The president tells me if they don't make a deal and fast, I'm considering blowing everything up and taking over the oil. Now, I asked him about the possibility of an agreement with the Iranians. He says those who are negotiating on behalf of Iran have been granted amnesty at this time so they can continue the talks. And the president tells me he thinks he'll be able to get a deal by tomorrow. He says, I think there's a good chance tomorrow. They're negotiating now.
Yeah. You know what we've learned from Wall Street Journal? They're reporting that Iran will not open the Strait of Hormuz and has refused to respond to yet another American ceasefire proposal. And the other part of this article in Wall Street Journal mentions that Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan are trying to convince Iran to engage in peace talks, but Iran has declined to meet with the United States officials. And, the tone is Donald Trump was talking about, and after, you remember, 48 hours, then 5 days, then 10 days, and he came back to 48 hours again. And today he issued a new ultimatum about, on Tuesday, 8 p.m. is going to be the final, sort of ultimatum on his part. I don't know what he's trying to make by this sort of, it seems that he's going to go, he's trying to manipulate the market, it seems to me. But the market doesn't care anymore about Donald Trump and what he's talking about. Do you think that does it have anything to do with the reality of talks? So far, what I've learned from the Iranian, there is no talk, no connection, no negotiations happening. And Donald Trump is arguing that they're reaching some sort of agreement. Go ahead.
I'd say it's not just Donald Trump manipulating the market. Iran's doing a good job of manipulating the market. Trump needs to manipulate the market down. Iran needs to manipulate the market up. And Trump comes out there, it's a peace deal. And by the way, and somebody put a short a half an hour before he came out the first time. He said, I'm talking to the Iranians. That big news. I'm talking with the Iranians. That was a week ago. Somebody put a big short of about $1.5 billion half an hour before that. So if it was either somebody from Trump's family or Trump's very inner circle, or a combination of them, to know that he was going to say that. And then the Iranians, and the market goes down, and the Iranians come back. No, we're not. And the market grows right back up. The cost of oil goes back up. So they're both playing the market, and the market is Trump's weak point. Because while he can ignore the pain of the people, he can't ignore the pain, any pain that's happening from his donors on the one hand, but on the other hand, they are making money off of this market. So to those Christian Zionists, and those who are considering Trump a Christian, if you can call him that, I don't particularly consider him a Christian. Maybe I'm wrong. But this is his actual message on Catholic and Protestant Easter. And pardon the French. I'm going to read it verbatim. Tuesday will be the power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There'll be nothing like it. Open the fucking straits, you crazy bastards, or you will be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. If this man sounds like he's Christian on the holiest day of the Christian calendar, then pardon, but you have a really warped sense of what Christianity is. I mean, this man is, that's one. Two, I don't know how much he's in charge of his faculties anymore. I'm sorry. He's all over the place, obviously. He's trying bluffing. Bluffing doesn't work. The problem with if you bluff and they call your bluff is either everybody figures out that you're just full of it and you've got nothing behind you, or you have to go back up the bluff with actual force. Problem for Trump is if he bombs Iran's, Iran has been responding not just tit for tat, but tit for tic-tac-tac, tic-tac-toe. They hit one Iranian plant, Iran hits 3 or 4 of their plants, whether it's Israeli or the Gulf Arabs. So Iran escalates the payback on that. So if they go after Iranian electric grid, you can say goodbye to the lights in the Middle East. And by the way, those desalination plants kind of need electricity, and you can run them off generator for some time. But and by the way, food spoilage too. Most of these Gulf states, they don't grow food. They may grow some very expensive food in greenhouses, which by the way need electricity or at least diesel. But they can't do it on. They can't hold regular food. Everything will spoil. You have to bring food in by ship, which isn't coming in. I mean, you could go through Amman and bring some amount of food in by truck, but I mean, you got to figure 5, 6, 7 million people have to be fed just across the border. That's a lot of food to bring in just by truck. I mean, you need a lot of trucks. So this is a very big problem. And on top of that, I'll tell you on aluminum, there's another one that's interesting enough. I was reading because aluminum processing is big in the Gulf. Right now, there's 6.8 million tons of aluminum production that's gone off market. Either it's fully shut down or is partially shut down. That's a huge amount of aluminum. I mean, Russia is one of the biggest producers of aluminum in the world, and so is China, but they can't make up that kind of hole. So aluminum prices are skyrocketing. That's, by the way, your automobiles and everything else. And of course, where's it going to skyrocket first and foremost? Not so much for China or for Russia, but for everybody else. Everybody's production gets that much more expensive.
The other points that was mentioned in this article in Wall Street Journal, it says that Iran has told mediators that the United States is not in a position to make any demands. And Donald Trump, by the way, he's making these sort of demands as time goes by. He's talking about the Strait of Hormuz. He's talking about they have to come to an agreement, to some sort of deal with the United States. But Is it possible, do you think, that even with this sort of attitude, with 48 hours, 2 days, 5 days, right now Tuesday 9 p.m., what sort of pressure is he able to put on Iranians if with the attacks, together with the attacks on, we know that they're attacking civilian infrastructures on the bridge. We had the attack on the bridge. We had the attacks on, Pasteur Institute, which produces vaccines, it produces
Hmm.
medicine, all of these stuff. And on the other hand, they have attacked. You've mentioned the case of with the security of the food, or somehow the security of energy in the region. We have 4 attacks on the nuclear power plant, Bushehr nuclear power plant, which is in the southern part close to the Persian Gulf, which some sort of contamination can happen, and that would hugely contaminate the Persian Gulf, consequently influence the water that these GCC countries are using.
Well, it won't contaminate most of those countries. The trade winds are blowing northwest. It will contaminate, and it's already by the second attack, there was a small cloud of contaminated um, condensate or water vapor that escaped, and it blew into Kuwait. That's where the wind is going. So it goes into Kuwait. From Kuwait, it's going to go, if it's a big enough loss, like for example a meltdown, which is saying this is what they're going for. They're committing nuclear terrorism. Big surprise that the proxies is Ukrainians are trying to commit nuclear terrorism with trying to when they tried to hit the Kursk nuclear power plant, and they're continuing to try to hit the Zaporozhye, which has been basically shut down. It's been put in conservation mode. So because of that, now, I mean, that's nuclear terrorism, and there's no other way to look at it. That's an attempt to mass murder a large amount of people through destroying nuclear infrastructure, and America is absolutely guilty of it. It's a war crime. It's a terrorist war crime. So you know what the regimes are dealing with. The thing is if there's a big enough meltdown, we know which way the trade winds are blowing. So that'll blow into Kuwait. From Kuwait, it'll hit western Iraq, northern Saudi Arabia, and continue its way into Syria and Turkey. Okay, the Syrian government is an illegal Islamic jihadist government that America put into power. Yeah, surprise there as usual. But the Turks, which have a legitimate government, have had to be thinking about, how is this going to affect southern Anatolia? Probably pretty friggin' badly when you have nuclear fallout coming from that. Just so people understand, as most people either don't remember or never really got a lot about, especially if they're Americans, and they really, most of them don't know the extent of what Chernobyl was. First of all, Chernobyl was only one block melting down. There's 2 blocks that are still generating electricity in Chernobyl, and always have been. So, and that was a full meltdown, but there wasn't a steam explosion. There was only a preliminary steam explosion from the water that was in the coolant tanks. The main aquifer of water underneath the nuclear power plant. 3 guys, and it was radioactive water. 3 guys went down there and they pumped the water out. One of them's died from a car crash. So I don't, radiation, but I guess it wasn't that radioactive because they all survived. Like I said, one died from a car wreck not even that long ago, 5 or 6 years ago. The other 2 guys are still alive. But they pumped the water out, and because if they hadn't, what would have happened was that core was melting down through the base of the nuclear power plant, and if it actually had hit that water, then there would have been a massive explosion. But considering the explosion that already did happen, that cloud reached up to Scotland, and for 10 years, Scottish herders were told not to take their sheep up into the mountains and not take their cattle up into the mountains because especially the moss absorbs the radiation from the environment. Moss is a big absorbent of radiation. Eventually, because it's a wet climate, eventually all washes out to sea and then gets distilled in the giant body of water. In a desert environment, it's obviously much worse because it's in sand, and every time the wind blows, that sand kicks back up, and there's not a constant wet climate to wash it all out. So that makes it much worse. But yeah, that'll reach into southern Anatolia. I mean, that's quite simply. I mean, that's the direction it'll go. So if I was Turkey, I'd definitely be looking at the Americans trying and the Israelis trying to commit nuclear terrorism and having a few choice words for it.
You know, the blame game is somehow going on as well, because the IDF, here is the report, shows the IDF has repeatedly said Iran only has a few hundred ballistic missiles remaining out of, you know, an original stockpile. They're talking about 2,500 ballistic missiles. They said that to Americans. You know, it's unbelievable. And how can somebody in the Trump administration believe what IDF and Mossad is giving them? You know,
Well, you
it's
know,
just not funny. It's funny. It's not. It's tragic. What's happening? Unbelievable.
it is now. Yeah, the puppy's by himself and going to bed, and he's barking really hard right now. I don't know if you can hear that or not. That's his first night in. So, but the problem here is that they convinced themselves, or maybe their intelligence really was that piss poor at the beginning, and or they maybe believed that no matter what, we can take out Iran fast enough that we don't have to worry about it. No matter how many missiles they have, the government will collapse, so it's not going to be a bad thing. Well, either way, they convinced themselves, and they convinced Trump, and the people around Trump. They all bought into the same. They all drank the Kool-Aid, and that's where we're standing right now. Is this big cluster? And it turns out that they actually have quite a few missiles, and the government didn't fall. And we're now on day 37 of the 4-day war, and nobody knows how the hell to get out, and the Iranians want revenge. So that becomes a very, very big problem, and that's the problem we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And they don't have a way out.
You know, when I was in Iran, I saw what has happened during the protests, how the protests turned into riots. And many people were asking, because they were using some sort of weapons against, they're killing both civilians and security forces. And here is what we've learned just today about the United States sending weapons to the Kurdish people and then send it to give it to the protesters in Iran. Here is what was said on Fox News today.
Also provided new details on what happened earlier this year as the Iranian regime took to the streets and slaughtered what the president tells me is 45,000 civilians in their own country. After that took place, President Trump told me the United States sent guns to the Iranian protesters. He tells me we sent them a lot of guns. We sent them through the president. He went on to say we sent guns to the protesters, a lot of them. And so a number of headlines here from my conversation with President Trump.
Yeah, he said that.
Yeah. I think they got their chronology just a little bit off. First, they sent guns, and then they had the protests. And the first protest, as happens normally when Americans try to do color revolutions, it's over something realistic. In this case, it was over the economy, and the protests weren't violent. That's usually how it starts. Of course, the economic issues were in very large part American-made. That's what Bassett's specialty is crashing currencies, not running an economy. That's why he doesn't. If you ever listen to him on any economic issues in the U.S., the man's absolutely clueless. He has no idea how economies run. But he was Soros's right-hand man. He crashed the Bank of London of England, for Soros, and that's what he does. He's a currency hitman, currency assassin. But as an economist, he's an absolute dunce. He needs to go back to first year university economics, macro and micro. I mean, the man's, listen to him. It's embarrassing. Let's listen to this guy. He's such an idiot. But they did do a good job on crashing the Iranian currency, which got people in the streets. And that's usually step one. And then step two, behind those people come the radicals. Whether they're Islamic radicals or Nazis or whatever, or even football fanatics. They don't care. They just need to get people out in the streets to start making trouble. The next step is usually to try to start killing people, to have sacrifices, to try to get the government to overreact. And that didn't happen. So they go, when the government didn't react, well, two things didn't happen. The government didn't overreact initially, and government officials didn't switch sides. They need to have military and police switch sides, which what happened in Georgia is they got to that point, and their little Maidan, their revolution, couldn't go any further because none of the police and none of the military switched sides. A bunch of bureaucrats came out and switched sides, just self-identified, and they have since been fired. But since the military and the police didn't switch sides, the power elites here in any society, that revolution petered out. Well, in Iran, when that didn't happen, that's when they went into mass killing, and they just tried to force it. And the moment the internet was switched off, the moment Russia brought in the blockers for the Starlink systems, that's it. That was pretty much a game over, because they didn't have the popular support, and they didn't have any factions in the government going into over to their side. But sure, yeah, they Americans sent them guns. They just sent them before the demonstration started, and they killed a lot of people. And there's lots of videos. And, they burnt ambulances, they burnt fire trucks in a lot of places so that the emergency services couldn't respond. They burnt clinics, killed people left and right, trying to. They went into mode of if we don't get parts of the government power organs on our side, the military and police and the state security, then we'll try to make the government look weak by just doing mass chaos. And again, that didn't work. So at least he's admitting what they were doing, but he's got his chronology very screwed up. And Americans have been doing the same thing. They did it in the Warsaw Pact. They did it first to Hungarians and to the Czechs. They set them up. The CIA set them up to rebel, knowing they were not going to get help from the West. They were just set up for being to be taken down by the rest of the Warsaw Pact at that point. This is nothing new. This is absolutely nothing new for the U.S. It's been doing it since the 50s.